When you look back at where Drake Maye is now, it feels obvious, right? Pro Bowls, an All-Pro selection, an AFC Championship run, a Super Bowl appearance, and by the time you watch this video, he may have already become a Super Bowl champion. See how I did that? When you stack those achievements together, the story almost writes itself. Drake Maye arrived. He figured it out. He became elite. But that version of the story skips the uncomfortable parts. It skips how narrow the path actually was. It skips how many moments could have tilted his career in a completely different direction. It skips how fragile quarterback development really is in the NFL. Because for a long stretch, Drake Maye did not look inevitable. He looked uncertain. He looked unfinished. At times, he looked like another young quarterback trying to survive long enough to prove he belonged. That's the part we forget once the wins pile up. So the real question is not when Drake Maye arrived. The real question is whether he arrived at all or whether circumstances finally aligned just enough to let his talent breathe. Quarterbacks don't usually flip a switch and become great. They endure. They absorb hits, criticism, and bad situations. Some don't make it out of the other side. Some do. And we pretend like it was always going to happen. From the moment Drake Maye entered the draft conversation, the labels came fast. You know how they do it. Big frame, strong arm, clean mechanics. He was described as the kind of quarterback teams felt comfortable betting on. A safe pick, high floor, solid upside, but maybe not spectacular. Those descriptions sounded reasonable. They were also incomplete. At North Carolina, Maye wasn't operating inside a cushy system that protected him from mistakes. The offense leaned heavily on him. He was asked to throw deep, extend plays, and create when structure broke down. When his supporting cast changed, especially in 2023, the burden didn't lessen, it increased. Weapons left for the NFL. Defenses adjusted, the margin for error shrank, and suddenly, the same throws that once looked bold were labeled risky. The same aggressiveness that once looked confident was reframed as reckless. This is where quarterback narratives quietly turn. Instead of asking what changed around him, the conversation shifted towards what he supposedly lacked. Was he truly special? Could he elevate lesser talent? Was he just a product of volume and opportunity? Media narratives love compression. Years of development get flattened into a few phrases. Once a quarterback is placed in an archetype, everything he does gets interpreted through that lens. A great throw confirms the label. A bad decision reinforces it. For Maye, the quote, safe but limited tag followed him into draft season. And once a quarterback wears that label, it becomes very hard to shake off. Drake Maye's 2022 season was undeniable. He led the nation in total offense. He won ACC Player of the Year. He put up numbers that forced the entire college football world to pay attention. But dominance can be misleading. That level of production created expectations that were almost impossible to maintain. When everything clicks, people assume it always will. When it doesn't, they assume something's broke. In 2023, the environment around Maye shifted. The offense lost pieces. Protection became less consistent. Defenses game planned specifically to limit him. The results were still good, but not historic. And that was enough for doubt to creep in. The conversation changed quickly. The tone shifted from certainty to skepticism. Analysts began asking whether 2022 was the peak rather than the baseline. But the truth was simpler. Drake Maye didn't suddenly become a different quarterback. The conditions changed, and with them, the margin for error disappeared. At quarterback, small changes in environment create big changes in perception. College success shows talent. It does not guarantee stability. And it certainly doesn't prepare a quarterback for how fast opinions turn once things stop looking perfect. When Drake Maye was selected 3rd overall, it felt like validation. A top 3 pick means belief. It means commitment. It means a franchise sees you as a long-term answer. But draft position does not equal protection. The New England Patriots was not a neutral landing spot. It was a franchise still living in the shadow of one Tom Brady, still searching for its next identity, and still unsure of its direction. Expectations were high, patience, of course, was thin, and the roster was in transition. The Patriots declined trade offers to stay put and take Maye. That decision showed confidence, but it also increased pressure. He wasn't just a quarterback, he was a statement, a reset, a symbol of what came next, and it could have gone very differently. On another team, Maye might have sat longer. On another team, he might have started immediately with a different coach. He might have been asked to do too much too soon, or held back too long. With less patience, early struggles could have defined him well before he ever had a real chance to adjust. Quarterback development is deeply tied to timing. Coaching continuity matters. Offensive structure matters. Protection matters. Confidence matters. A single draft slot cannot supply any of those things. Maye landed in a situation that wobbled before it stabilized. Early uncertainty, staff changes, and roster flaws all threatened to stunt his growth. Many quarterbacks never recover from that phase. Drake Maye did, but not because the process was clean or simple. He survived the mess long enough for the alignment to improve, and that's the part that gets lost when we tell the story backwards. Drake Maye's rookie season is already being quietly erased from the story. Not because it was a disaster, but because it makes people uncomfortable. He didn't walk in and take over the league. He didn't start week 1. He wasn't handed the offense and told to cook. He began the year on the sideline, holding a clipboard behind Jacoby Brissett, watching a team that clearly wasn't built to protect a young quarterback. When he finally got on the field mid-season, it wasn't some perfect setup. The Patriots were struggling. The offensive line was leaking pressure almost immediately. The skill position group was thin, young, and inconsistent. Maye was asked to run an offense that barely had an identity, while also adjusting to the NFL speed. That's a brutal way to start a career. Statistically, the season landed right in that uncomfortable middle space. You saw flashes that made sense of why he was drafted so high. The tight window throws, off-platform passes that only work if your arm is special enough. Calm moments under pressure that didn't look like panic. But you also saw mistakes that rookies make when they're trying to survive. Late reads, forced throws, hits he shouldn't have taken. This is the version of Drake Maye that rarely gets talked about now. The one where everything could have gone sideways. If the team had stayed bad just a little longer, if the losses stacked up a little faster, if a few interceptions landed differently, the conversation would have turned ugly. The words were already waiting. You know how they do it. Overdrafted, raw, needs years, not the guy. That rookie season didn't define him because it didn't break him, but it very easily could have. Quarterback careers don't usually end with one big moment. They die slowly. One hit that lingers longer than expected. One coordinator who doesn't believe in you. One stretch where the staff decides development can wait until later. And then later never comes. Drake Maye walked that line early. One concussion would have changed timelines. One coaching decision could have shortened his leash. One bad month could have turned patience into doubt. History is full of quarterbacks who were talented enough but never got stable ground under their feet. They didn't fail because they couldn't play. They failed because the environment never stopped shaking. The difference with Maye is that he wasn't asked to be a savior right away, but he also wasn't buried. He played enough to learn. He took enough hits to understand what the league demands. He made mistakes without being publicly discarded for them. That balance is rare, and it matters more than people like to admit. He didn't explode onto the scene. He survived long enough to stay in the conversation. That's not a small thing. Survival is step one. Everything else comes later. By the time the 2025 season arrived, the story started changing fast. Not because Drake Maye suddenly became a different player. That's what we all like to believe. But because the context finally made sense. The Patriots committed to a clear direction. Mike Vrabel brought in structure and accountability. Josh McDaniels brought in an offense that actually fit a young quarterback instead of asking him to be everything at once. The offensive line improved. Not perfect, but functional. That alone changed how Maye played. Fewer panic throws, better footwork, more willingness to stay in the pocket and let routes develop. The offense had an identity now. Reads had timing. Plays had answers built in. Maye wasn't just improvising just to survive anymore. Suddenly, traits that were once questioned looked different. His decision-making wasn't reckless. It was confident. His athleticism wasn't labeled risky. It was a weapon. The same throws that were called dangerous became high-level aggression. You know how they do it. That's how fast narratives flip when wins follow. Media tone shifted almost overnight. He wasn't a project anymore. He wasn't potential. He was being discussed as elite. Nothing about his arm changed. Nothing about his frame changed. What changed was that the league finally saw him operating with something stable. It's so tempting to call what happened next a breakout. That word makes it feel sudden, like a switch flipped. But Drake Maye didn't wake up in 2025 with new abilities. What he had was accumulation, reps that matter, mistakes he already made once, scars from hits he learned to avoid the second time. Protection was the biggest difference. With an extra half second, his processing showed up. Throws came out on time. His completion percentage climbed because he wasn't forced into constant desperation. Deep ball efficiency improved because those throws were planned, not prayers. Advanced numbers like EPA per dropback didn't create the success, they just confirmed it. Structure mattered just as much. The offense trusted him, and he trusted it back. That trust shows up in small ways. Checking down instead of forcing a hero play. Staying patient on second and long. Understanding when athleticism is the answer and when it's a trap. This wasn't some overnight success. It was delayed visibility. The talent was always there. What almost went wrong is that he could have been judged before the environment caught up. Quarterbacks don't suddenly become elite. They last long enough for people to finally see who they were all along. It's truly uncomfortable to think about how close Drake Maye was to becoming a completely different story. Not a different player, but a different label. Imagine that. Same rookie year without a reset button. Same pressure. Same weak protection. Same confusion. But no coaching change and no real plan to support him. That version of the story usually doesn't end well. Quarterbacks don't lose confidence all at once. It slips away, play by play. A missed block leads to a hit. A hit leads to rushing the next throw. A rushed throw leads to an interception. And soon, the quarterback isn't trusting what he sees. He's playing to avoid mistakes instead of playing to make plays. That's how abilities get burned. If New England had stayed stuck, Maye's early mistakes would have hardened into a reputation. Fans would have grown restless. Media would have framed every flaw as proof. That word bust would have started floating around, not because his talent had vanished, but because the environment never gave him room to breathe. This isn't just about Drake Maye. The league does this every single year. We pretend quarterback failure is simple. We ignore how many things would have to go right just to stay afloat. When a player flames out early, we rarely ask what support was missing. We just move on. Drake Maye was a few bad decisions away from being added to that very list. Quarterback success is about alignment. Talent matters, but it's only one piece. Timing matters just as much. Infrastructure matters more than fans want to admit. When those three things line up, careers take off. When they don't, even the most gifted of players stall. And that's why copying results never work. Teams see a quarterback like Maye, take a leap and assume they can recreate it by drafting someone similar. Same size, same arms, same college hype, but without patience, coaching, and protection, the outcome is different. Development isn't a straight line. There are stalls. There are step backs. There are quiet seasons where the most important growth doesn't show up on a stat sheet. And fans hate that. We want instant answers. We want to know by week 5 if someone is the guy. The reality is that rushing judgment often creates that very failure people fear. Drake Maye's path worked because the team eventually slowed down. That's harder than it sounds. Slowing down means accepting short-term discomfort for long-term clarity. Most organizations don't have the stomach for that. To understand Drake Maye today, you have to look past the numbers. He isn't just putting up stats because the system is friendly. He isn't riding a perfect situation, and he was never inevitable. What stands out now is he's calm. Pressure doesn't speed him up the way it once did. Bad plays don't snowball. That steadiness didn't appear overnight. It comes from being tested early on and not breaking. It also comes from who he is off the field. Maye grew up around competition. Sports were normal, not glamorous. Winning mattered, but so did preparation. That kind of upbringing doesn't make someone great on its own, but it gives them balance when things go wrong. They don't spiral, and when things go right, they don't get ahead of themselves. That stability didn't turn Drake Maye into a star. It allowed the work to show when the environment finally matched his skill. Without it, the pressure might have crushed him before we ever saw what he could have become. Drake Maye didn't suddenly arrive. He was almost rewritten before he ever had a fair chance to be understood. His success isn't proof that quarterback evaluation is easy. It's more proof that it's fragile. Careers don't follow destiny. They follow balance between talent and patience, between pressure and protection, between expectations and reality. When that balance breaks, stories end early. The real lesson in Drake Maye's rise isn't about him alone. It's about how often we rush to conclusions, how quickly we decide who belongs and who doesn't. Somewhere in the league right now, there's another quarterback walking in the same thin line. The question isn't whether Drake Maye is elite. The question is who else we're misreading before it's too late. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.